The first vice president and church leaders discussed the violence in Greater Jonglei and Bibor administrative area. Ministry of Health receives COVID-19 kits from donors. And government requests donors to cancel Sudan's debt. A very warm good evening to all viewers and welcome to our SSBC English Bulletin. I am Nyebeng Mayom Tulba with you for this evening's news. Starting off our news for this evening, the first vice president met with church leaders as well as elders from Kojokeji area. Our colleague Tex Stephen has more on this story.
The first Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar Teny, met with members of South Sudan Council of Churches, led by Bishop Arcangelo Wani Lemi and other church leaders. Speaking to SSBC after the meeting, Bishop Arcangelo said they discussed the communal conflict in Greater Jonglei and how to resolve the situation. He also added that they touched on the implementation of the peace agreement and the need to form a state government to improve the security at the state level.
We shared a lot of issues of great concern, especially in our country this time round, ranging from the communal conflicts that are going on and the corona pandemic, and how we are so dismayed by the extent of the suffering that has been caused by all this. And we assured His Excellency, ourselves, of the already work that the Council of Churches is doing and the journey we have embarked on, especially with regards to following up with the issues in Greater Jonglei.
In a separate news development, Dr. Machar also met with a group of Kajukeji elders headed by former Presidential Advisor on Economic Affairs Agri Tisa Sabuni, who told SSBC after the meeting that they discussed issues on sending SPLA-IO forces who are in Kajukeji to cantonment sites to encourage the displaced communities to return home and participate in the peace implementation.
Issues of mutual concern to the people and the territory of Kajukeji. He has sizable elements of the IO in Kajukeji. We want those elements to go to the cantonment sites and proceed to the training camps. We also touched quite a lot on the overall implementation of the peace process and how this can also translate into peace and stability on the ground in Kajukeji.
Reporting for SSBC.
Vice President Dr. James Wani Iga directed the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management to deliver humanitarian assistance to the people affected by the intercommunal violence in Greater Jonglei. The Vice President issued the directives during a meeting with the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, Peter Mayan, in Juba on Friday.
The Ministry of Humanitarian and Disaster Management, along with the SRC, is tasked to provide the humanitarian assistance and needs for the particular to the areas that are affected. We had discussed at length how best we could fulfill these assignments, and we had also agreed that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management will put up a quick plan of how best the situations to the affected communities in Jonglei could be addressed. As the high-level task force look at the political settlements, also the aspect to address the humanitarian needs in Jonglei states, particularly to the community that had been affected as a result of communal violence, is important. And I assure him the readiness of the ministry to work together with the high-level task force on Jonglei so that the humanitarian needs and the affected.
Legislator representing Greater Bor in the Transnational National Legislator and the Vice President for Gender and Youth Cluster, Rebecca Nyandeng Dimabur, discussed the security situation in Greater Jonglei. The Vice President and the outgoing Japanese ambassador also discussed cooperation between Juba and Tokyo. Abraham Aken has more on this story.
Vice President for Gender and Youth Cluster Rebecca Nyandeng de Mabior and legislators representing Greater Bor in the Transitional National Legislature discussed the security situation in Jonglei following the incident that led to the loss of lives and others wounded. The chairperson of Greater Bor Parliamentary Caucus, Deng Dao Deng, said disarmament of the youth was among the agenda discussed.
The briefing concerning about the outcome of the Security Council meeting that was held by the Security Council of the Republic of South Sudan. And so she briefed the members of the caucus and the other leaders on the importance of the situation in Jonglei. And among the issues that were discussed was the message that was delivered to the Vice President by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Sudan, to consult with the members of the caucus and the leaders of Jonglei. We have also supported the idea that disarmament will follow as soon as the disengagement between youth is done. So as leaders, we have also supported this.
In a separate news, Japan says it would continue supporting the government of South Sudan in developmental projects. This came in a meeting between the Vice President for Gender and Youth Cluster, Rebecca Nyandeng de Mabior, and the Japanese outgoing Ambassador, C.J. Okada, in Juba on Friday. Ambassador C.J. Okada said the meeting also discussed gender equality.
Japan invited, 4 athletes, young athletes, and 1 coach, to train in Japan to participate in the Olympic game. Actually, the Olympic game is supposed to be held this summer, but very unfortunately, because of this COVID-19, Japan decided, to postpone 1 year. So the Olympic will be held next summer. We discuss about, how, we are to work with the young people here and the women's empowerment, and also the particular as a recent issue, and this current COVID-19 issue, there are many things, the First President has to take care. So we discussed some idea on that, such as providing a emergency kind of a food distribution, or the kind of providing the masks, or the sanitization, the thing, so that's very important issue we discussed today.
Abraham Aken.
Speaker Obach Aku emphasized the importance of cooperation and coordinating work between the national legislator and government for effective parliamentary oversight work and independence of the parliament. The speaker spoke during a meeting with the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Juba Nunu Kumba, on Friday. Speaking to SSBC, Nunu said that they discussed relations between the parliament and the government.
So I'm here basically to meet the leadership of the channel in order to acquaint myself with the work, the assignment that I have been given, which is mainly to coordinate the work of the Ministry of Parliamentary, to coordinate the work of the Assembly and the Executive, and build a strong linkages between the two parties, and also a good working relationship between the two institutions. I've listened to the concerns that there have been in the Ministry, and I've taken note of them, and as soon as the Cabinet resumes the sitting, I will definitely raise those issues to the Cabinet. I've also briefed them on the functions and responsibilities of the Ministry, and now we are reviewing the functions of the roles of the Ministry in the context of the peace agreement that has been signed, because our key responsibility now or assignment is to really implement the
The President of the Sudan Sovereign Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok reiterated their commitment to Juba peace talks to restore peace and stability in the Sudan. As Go Anthony reports from Khartoum, Dr. Hamdok and Abdel Fattah made the pledge during separate meetings with the Sudan Peace Mediation Committee led by Tut Gadluak and members of the Sudan Revolutionary Front in Khartoum on Friday.
Efforts are being built up by both the Sudanese leadership and the South Sudan Peace Mediation Committee, as well as the leadership of Sudan opposition armed groups, to ensure that the remaining critical outstanding issues in the Sudanese peace process, including power sharing ratio, security arrangement and constitutional making process, are addressed in order to reach peace deal as soon as possible. The chairperson of South Sudan Peace Mediation Committee in the Sudanese peace talks, Tut Galwak Manime, who led a high-level delegation to Khartoum, met with the President of Transitional Sovereign Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and discussed progress and challenges in the peace process, and conveyed President Kiir's message to his Sudanese counterpart Abdel Fattah regarding bilateral relations between Juba and Khartoum.
الحقيقة نحن جينا من جوبا عاملين رسالة من رئيس سلفا رئيس جمهورية دولة جنوب السودان لأخي حقوق فريق أول عبد الفتاح برهاني رئيس المجلس السيادة بيتعلق بملف المعروف لكل الناس. نحن دولة جنوب الآن وسيط عشان نجيب السلام بين القوة الأركان المسلحة حاملين سلاح ضد الحكومة. نحن كنا في التفاوض وكل الناس متابعينه. نحن الآن وصلنا لنهاية التفاوض، وصلنا لوصول على السلام، وعملنا رسالة سير الرئيس جاهزية بتاع دولة الجنوب ورئيس السلفا بتوقيع اتفاقية السلام الشامل بيشمل كل قضايا المعلقة في الصراع موجود في السودان. ونحن دايرين بيننا الكبير في السودان الصغير ما يكون في أي زعزعة. إذا كان في سلام موجود في السودان معناه السلام موجود في جنوب السودان.
The delegation also had a constructive discussions with the Sudanese Prime Minister Dr. Abdallah Hamdok on the peace negotiation process and way forward to speed up the peace talks being held in Juba. The Sudanese Prime Minister Dr. Abdallah Hamdok reiterated his full commitment to stand and support Juba peace process to end the long civil war in all parts of Sudan.
في جمهورية جنوب السودان بقيادة المستشار توت قلواك والدكتور ديو في هذه المراحل الهامة جدا من التفاوض. تقديره الخاص لدولة جنوب السودان، دور الرئيس سلفا كير ورفاقه في الوساطة، مشددا على تقدير السودان الخاص لكل التضحيات اللي قدموها من أجل تحقيق السلام، لأن السلام في الشمال في السودان هو سلام لجنوب السودان.
According to the chairperson of Sudan Mediation Committee, Tut Galwak, efforts are underway to resolve the outstanding issues.
حاملين رسالة بتاع سلام لحلنا في السودان، التقينا برئيس وزراء وأكدناه التزام جاهزين للسلام وتوقيع اتفاقية سلام قريبا. وقبل سير رئيس الوزراء كل ما طرح قدمناه، وكان بحضور وفد تفاوض الحكومة مع أن السيد الوزير رئاسة مجلس الوزراء والوزير الحكومة المحلي والوزير ديل كان من الكبار المفوضين الحكومة. وناقشنا الأجندة الذين وصلنا اتفاق، والأجندة ما وصلنا فيه اتفاق ما أجندة ائتلافية. ونحن قبل كل سير الوزراء الحن وجه لأنه الإسراع الاتفاق ضروري يشرف الشعب السوداني. ما نعجز لمواطن في السودان بقضايا ما بيجبح السودان ولا بيجبح دور السلام. السلام عنده ثمن، والسلام ضروري جدا يجي في السودان عشان يطبق مشاعر الثورة واستقرار السودان.
Yasir Said Araman, who represented Sudan Revolutionary Front, said they would work hand in hand with the government of Sudan to ensure that the remaining outstanding issues are resolved.
السلام يجب أن يكون لتوحيد الشعب السوداني وليس لإحداث شقاق في صفوف الشعب أو في صفوف مؤسسات الفترة الانتقالية. وهذا ما سنعمل عليه نحن دعاة وحدة، نحن دعاة انحياز للتغيير ولمدنية الدولة ولوحدة كافة الشركاء.
The chief negotiator and members of the Sudan Revolutionary Front would also meet with the Sudanese peace negotiation team to iron out the outstanding issues. Gori Anthony, SSBC News, Khartoum, Sudan.
Thanks, Gora Anthony, for that wonderful report. Continuing on, we're going to go on a short break. So in return, we'll have more news for you, so please stay tuned.
Coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is respiratory illness or an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus.
The first vice president and church leaders discussed the violence in Greater Jonglei and Bibor administrative area. Ministry of Health receives COVID-19 kits from donors. And government requests donors to cancel Sudan's debts. Welcome back, viewers. If you've just joined us, you're watching South Sudan Broadcasting Channel English Bulletin News, and I am Nyibeng Mayom Tulba with you. The government has requested the international community to cancel Sudan's debt to strengthen its economy. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Beatrice Wani, was addressing a conference organized by Germany to improve Sudan's economy. During the conference, the minister also urged the government of Sudan to have a look on a BA protocol. Martin Jada has more on this story.
You know so well, any transition is messy, it is nonlinear. So many challenges, but let me just mention a few of them.
In order to embolden Sudan's economy, the Federal Republic of Germany has on Thursday organized a virtual economic partnership conference to help Sudan catch up with the strong economies in the continent.
Enormous support from the international community, political support and financial support. And that's exactly what we are today here for.
We assess the financial gap to be at least $1.5 to $2 billion for 2020-2021. This money has to be in place, because if it is not, then inflation cannot be put under control, and these reforms would not have legs.
So we provide, from our African Development Fund, with $445 million that we have for arrears payments.
Today, I'm pleased to announce $356.2 million in assistance for the Sudanese people and the transitional government.
But the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Beatrice Wani, said for Sudan to be stronger, all debts on Sudan have to be cancelled.
South Sudan has been one of the voices that has consistently called for debt relief for Sudan, and therefore fully supports any initiative aimed at strengthening Sudan economically, such as the mutual partnership framework agreed during the Friends of Sudan meeting held in Paris in May 2020, as well as the convention of this partnership conference at the behest of Sudan, Germany, the EU, and the United Nations. Your Excellencies, South Sudan and Sudan share strategic infrastructural services at the borders, but also at Port Sudan. Therefore, improvements at the port would increase its capacity and efficacy. Moreover, diplomatically, our shared borders and other disputed areas, including Abyei, should, as a matter of principle, be examined or visited in cooperation with the new civilian political leadership in the Sudan.
If Sudan debts are cancelled, it will remove heavy burden crippling its economy. Martin Gabriel.
The Ministry of Health received personal protective equipment that includes sanitizers, face masks, gloves, and sprays from Turkey to fight COVID-19. The minister also received testing kits and sanitizers from Red Cross. RAC Media Group also donated face masks. The Minister of Health, Elizabeth Echwe-Ayuol, thanked the donors supporting the government in the fight against the virus. The Minister of Finance and the British Ambassador discussed the challenges facing South Sudan following the drop in oil price in the international market due to the outbreak of coronavirus pandemic. James Arusia has more on this story.
As COVID-19 ravages the globe, a drop in global oil prices in the international market has turned into a peril to South Sudan finance and planning institutions. Oil revenue that finances major projects in the country is said not selling, with a great depreciation in its demand, as most countries are exercising total lockdown to curb the spread of the virus.
It has been my honor to have the chance to call on His Excellency the Minister of Finance to talk about the partnership between the international community and the government of South Sudan and the challenges that the government of South Sudan is facing, both in the context of the COVID epidemic, but also in the context of falling oil revenues and the challenges that the Ministry of Finance has to ensure that the government of South Sudan is able to continue to provide services for the people.
South Sudan's economy, greatly financed by oil revenue, turns to be facing major obstacles for its developmental projects. Finance and Planning Minister Salvatore Garang says the government has established public finance management team that will look into less explored sector of non-oil revenue to substitute the lost revenue in the oil prices that have dropped greatly.
We went through some of the difficulties the Ministry of Finance as a country in terms of finances, and what we are doing to augment the big gap created by the fall of the oil prices. And we told Ambassador that we are trying to improve our system by putting on the oversight committee of the public financial management with international support, of which the American ambassador was the co-chair.
And also in a meeting with the South Sudan National Youth Union delegation, Honorable Salvatore Garang is said to have pledged to improve the activities of the youth union in engaging youth in developmental activities.
He promised us that he's going to look into it despite the challenges and economic crisis that's facing the country. So we are optimistic because the minister expressed his willingness to support the young people by recognizing the role that the young people can play in terms of nation building.
With the current economic crisis in the country, youths that compose over 60% of the national population are greatly affected. Minister of Finance and Planning Under Secretary Garang Majak says there will be support extended to the youth activities regardless of the current economic situation.
Our Minister, Honorable Garang Majak, has agreed to support them financially, and we are directed to give them at least some financial support to be able to run their offices, to be able to purchase some asset for the offices, and also be able to conduct the activities in relation to the COVID-19. And also it is important that youth union is instrumental in the development of the country.
South Sudan just emerged from a conflict that dragged the country's economy to depression. The global outbreak of COVID-19 in a time the country is implementing a peace deal is an additional weight that has drawn support from international community to minimize occurrence of grave impact in the country. James Arusi.
The Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security has identified backyard farming as an important element that contributes to food security. This came in a meeting between Minister Josephina Joseph and the Egyptian Ambassador Mohammed Kada in Juba on Friday. The meeting also touched on Egypt's support to the development of a Will rice scheme. The Egyptian Ambassador described agriculture as an important source of revenue to boost the country's economy.
The Egyptian government has been keen to support us, not just in agricultural development, but also in infrastructure, in health, and in other areas. Now, we want to take this opportunity to realize a very important agricultural project that we in this ministry have identified, and it's going to be our flagship project for this year, which is
garden or backyard farming. Backyard farming, vegetable cultivation in not just Juba, but also later on in other areas will be an important element of what we want to do to contribute to food security.
We spoke about usual repeaters, subjects that we usually discuss with the Honorable Minister of Agriculture. I also seized on this opportunity to listen very earnestly to the Honorable Minister about the progress achieved in the consolidation of peace and the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. We agree, of course, that there is this important nexus between security and development, and there can be no development without security. Very much stand on the side of South Sudan, side of peace. We've been supportive, doing our best to.
The Minister of Petroleum, Port Kangchol, and the British Ambassador, Chris Trott, discussed the role of oil industry in supporting peace efforts. In a statement, the British Ambassador said they also discussed the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement.
So I started by congratulating him on his appointment and also congratulating him on the role he is playing in the new Public Finance Management Committee, which we believe is a very important structure within the South Sudanese government. I was very keen to understand from the Minister his priorities as Minister of Petroleum. We recognise the importance that petroleum plays in providing the government of South Sudan with its revenue, and we have in the past called for greater transparency in the way that this revenue is being spent, and also transparency in the sector. And the Minister was able to explain to me his vision for the future of the oil sector in South Sudan and his role in supporting both the South Sudan oil sector, but ultimately also his important role in supporting the peace process in South Sudan. Because, as he said, without the income of the oil sector, the peace process will struggle to deliver and be implemented. So for me, this was a really reassuring conversation.
The Chief of Defense Force, General Johnson Okot, has called on the people of South Sudan to work for peace and development. General Johnson spoke during the funeral prayer of Huda Salah, the wife of Major General Isaiah Paul, in Juba on Wednesday. Huda Salah died in Khartoum last week. The chairperson of Kakwa Community Association, Simon Sabit, described the death of Huda Salah as a great loss to the community of Yei.
Inta litsahala sifa fi zaman gisera nano wakarulena musulia namu musulia mtakale nakhali musulia na kakhas nakhali zuruna kakhas عشان انت لسه مهم في القياده انا جاي فوقه مزموله بتاعك قاعدين في نص نسمي لعزايا اللي قوي قلبه عشان يوصلوا لمستوى الرغم اللي لسه دايره يعمل.
احنا كأسره او كشعب احنا بنكون حزنانين لانه اذا زول بيموت بكون خساره بالنسبه للاسره. لكن إذا زمن تزول جاء إنه بقول لا ربنا يتعودي ويتعبسلو وكذا التخصص لكل زول. لكن هنا كانوا جماعة كانوا بقول لنا كلنا أنا بذكر حاجة بسيط لمواطنين أو الشعب الموجود ده. أنا عارف عنه الحضور ده بيمثل صفة بتاع جنوب أو شخصية بتاع جنوب السودان، شعب بتاع جنوب السودان. أنا هنا كأسرة أو كمجتمع هنا عايزين كل أسرة يكون قوي زي أسرة بتاع إسايا كان مهودة. أسرة ده لما انتهى قوي ده بيأكد أنه يال.
Looks like we've come to the end of our news. Thank you so much for watching, and it is always a pleasure to have your company. Once again, I am Nyibeng Mayom Tulba. Until next time, stay safe and stay blessed, and have a wonderful weekend.